It's a warm welcome here in our studios in Serekunda. This is the Star TV News and I am Ajakari Sanyang. In the headlines tonight, police denies 3 years Jotna permit. Duduja claims government is afraid of Jammeh. Government to show zero tolerance to human rights violations and trafficking, says Vice President Dr. Aissatou Touré. Senegalese at Karang restricts Gambia buses from transporting their customers to Dakar. On the international scene, Guineans rally against President Alpha Conde's bid to extend term. Libya ceasefire deal extended awaits Haftar's signature. US expels 21 Saudi cadets after Florida naval base attack probe. Those were the headlines and now the news in detail. Duduja, the deputy spokesperson of the Opposition Alliance for Patriotic Reorientation and Construction, APRC, has claimed that the current government of Adama Barrow is scared of ex-president Yahya Jammeh. Speaking to Star TV on Monday, Jah says the reason government becomes restless whenever the name of Jammeh is mentioned is because it is fearful of him. Tumani Koli has the rest of the story.
An audio of ex-president Jammeh has been making the rounds for the past few days. He was on a telephone conversation with the APRC's deputy party leader, Ousmane Rambo Jatta. In the audio, Jammeh called on the government to enforce the joint communique between him, the European Union, the African Union and ECOWAS, which sent him into exile in 2017. The APRC is also planning to protest on the 16th to call on the government to implement the joint communique and that Jammeh should be allowed to return back to the country. However, the government spokesperson Ibrahim Sankare has warned Jammeh against coming back. He claims that if Jammeh returns, the government cannot guarantee his security and safety. This is something Mr. Jah finds amusing and pathetic. To him, the simple reason the government says that is because they are scared of Jammeh.
Thank you. It's not about not being able to guarantee his safety. Let me break the ice here. They're afraid of Jammeh. Afraid in a sense, the popularity, the love he has among Gambians. This is what terrifies them. To the extent they made Adama Barrow to believe if you allow Jammeh to come back, your political career is finished. You cannot compare Barrow with Jammeh. Go out there and mobilize people, let the people choose. You don't compare the two. People say, what about 2016 election? It's a coalition. 7 political parties plus individual candidates came together. And what was the margin difference? Not much. So this should be a lesson. So if Barrow thinks alone he can take on Jammeh, definitely he's been misled. So this is the fear he has, that Jammeh's foot in this country, your popularity will, you lose it in thin air. So this talking about security, we're all in this country. Gambia has the capacity to secure the whole nation, talk less of one individual. For me, that is a joke. They're not being honest to Gambians, and they're portraying that Gambia is insecure to the wider world, which is definitely not true. I will question that. With all the security sectors in this country, definitely that is a joke. I will repeat that. Sankara is a joke. And he's incompetent. We as Gambians, we are not insecure, and we have security apparatus that can secure this whole country because they did it for 22 years, and the same security operator is still here, and these personnel are Gambians, and they're willing to die for their country. I definitely did not buy that from him. It's too cheap.
Jack continued that the planned protest is not also meant for Jammeh's return alone, but for the government to implement everything that is in the joint communique.
And we're not saying that when we take to the streets, yeah, Jammeh is coming back. We never said that. That's the concept of what people said. Even if you listen to his audio, which is circulated in social media, he says the joint communique, the joint declaration must be implemented. This is what he's calling for. Not only coming home, but whatever is in that document must be implemented. He might not come home, but they're selling his properties. What belongs to him legally is being sold by this government. That's part of the agreement. His people are being intimidated. That's part of the joint communique. He's not saying, go out in the streets so that I will come home. He never said that. If anybody hears any audio or whoever said that within the hierarchy of the APRC, they can furnish us with such information. He said the joint communique must be implemented. And I think that is his right. That's what he respected until he went into exile. But they are putting that under the carpet. He has a right to remind them, to take them to tax, let them respect it.
The APRC has not been issued a permit yet. However, a good number of Gambians sees no reason why the party should be given a permit to protest when they denied Gambians the right to demonstrate when they were in power. Chief among them is the Gambia Center for Victims of Human Rights Violation, who has sent a tough warning letter to the Inspector General of Police on behalf of victims of YAHYA Jammeh, requesting the police not to honor a permit application by the APRC, arguing that to protest for the return of YAHYA Jammeh to the country is a direct sabotage to the ongoing transitional process. Tumani Koli, reporting for Star TV News.
The Department of Strategic Policy and Delivery at the Office of the President and the National Agency Against Trafficking in Person, NAATIP, in collaboration with the International Organization for Migration, IOM, organized a two-day working session this morning at the Coral Beach Hotel on combating trafficking in person. Darucham reports.
The Vice President of the Gambia, Dr. Aissatou Toure, in her opening remarks said the issue of human trafficking has been under the carpet, but from now on, the government will engage all sectors of the public to showcase that there is zero tolerance to human rights violations and trafficking in this country. The Vice President mentioned the actions plans and activities currently undergoing in engagement with the Justice Ministry, Office of the President, security sectors, and NGOs to fight human rights violations and eradicate any form of violence and trafficking in person. The call on these bodies is to make or take up their responsibility in the framework without delay, including the public. Mr. Marana, the representative from the Ministry of Justice, also elaborates on the measures taken by the Ministry of Justice in the issue of this short kind of actions this past years in line with the Trafficking in Person Act and Children Act. Marina concluded by assuring that the ministry will continue to take the matter very seriously and also keep supporting the work of the National Agency Trafficking in Person to ensure the prosecutions of traffickers of all forms and put them to justice. Reporting for Star TV News, I am Dado Cham.
Senegalese at Karang on Sunday afternoon restricted Gambia Transport Service Company's bosses from transporting their customers to Dakar. In an interview with Star TV, the Transport Service Company indicated that this is the second time such is happening in Karang. Modo El Baji reports.
With all the international policies and memorandum that are meant to smoothen the transportation between the Gambia and Senegal, the Gambia Transport Service Company has been confronted with numerous challenges with the people of Senegal. The Deputy Director of the Gambia Transport Service Company, Raymond Cissé, reveals that the Gambia government has signed a memorandum with the Senegalese government in order to allow the Gambia Transport Service buses to be moving freely in and out of Senegal. But the Senegalese people in Karang are not complying to their government's MOU with the Gambian government.
Because this problem had begun and it was affecting our services. So after the discussions we had with them across the border, Senegal, Gambia, Amdalai, Karang, the end result, even after the government have signed the accord, the Senegalese, in a nutshell, are refusing blatantly to adhere to it.
Mr. Cissé added that this past Sunday, one of their new buses was stopped from entering Senegal by the local drivers who argue that the Gambia Transport Service buses affect their economic gains in Senegal. The traffic manager at the Gambia Transport Service Company, Amadou Dramé, witnessed the incident in Karang and lamented that they have called on the necessary stakeholders to intervene in addressing this problem, and he further apologized to their extreme customers.
We are saying to the customers, it's unfortunate, but we apologize as an institution, and definitely we will take action from here. Looking at the GTC management are working on the way to help them to see how best we can compensate them, because they choose GTSC to travel with us because of our safety and comfort.
Mr. Dramé added that the Senegalese people put hurdles on their way, which resulted to their return to the Gambia that very day. Model Baji, Star TV.
We'll be going for a short break and we'll be right back with international news. Please stay tuned. Welcome back. Now news beyond our borders. At least 2 people have been killed during the anti-government protests in Guinea. For almost 3 months, thousands have been demonstrating against a possible change to the constitution that could allow President Alpha Conde to seek a third term. The protesters say government forces used undue force, while the government says it will investigate the killings. Al Jazeera's Victoria Gattenby reports.
Haitian President Jovenel Moise will be facing some tough questions in the next few days. Moise could be running the country on his own from now on, after the mandate of Congress and 2/3 of the Senate expired on Monday. Moise blamed congressmen for the current situation that has left the country without a legitimate government.
In 2018, I called on Parliament to an extraordinary session to vote on the electoral law. This did not happen, and again in November in 2018, we sent a budget to the Parliament, and there were millions of dollars for elections, and in January the budget was sent back to the executive. They were supposed to vote for the electoral law and the Prime Minister, and they never did.
The president didn't say when elections will take place, and announced he will use the money spent on congressmen's salaries to build schools. The failure to hold elections has left Haiti in a constitutional vacuum. The president says that this is a unique opportunity to push for structural reforms that could help this country move forward, but there are lots of fear that this could lead to abuse of power. These people say they want Moise and the congressmen out. They blame them for the current economic situation that millions of Haitians face every day. The mismanagement of the Petrocaribe Fund, which is the program of subsidized oil from Venezuela, angered many here.
We asked for a clean slate because we want everybody to go. They stole money from Petrocaribe and built themselves next to the beach, but nothing for us.
The UN says that deteriorating economic conditions, including low growth, high inflation, and an increase in the cost of basic food items, have had a negative impact on the humanitarian situation. Millions are going hungry.
There is no investment in the public sector. There is no investment in the private sector. So we are in a situation of total fracture of the economy, and this affects institutional functioning. We need to work on a national reorganization, and this cannot be done with Jovenel Moise because he has shown his incapacity to rule.
The Organization of American States and members of the international community say they're negotiating with all political parties to prevent chaos in the country. But there are many who claim the international community has prevented real political change because it has supported a political class that has been unable to resolve the serious conditions Haitians face every day. Teresa Bo, Al Jazeera, Port-au-Prince.
As a fragile, temporary ceasefire likely holds in Libya, its warring leaders are a step closer to making it more permanent. While the head of the UN-recognized Government of National Accord, Fayez al-Sarraj, has already signed a draft ceasefire deal, renegade military commander Khalifa Haftar asked for an extension before signing. The talks are brokered by Turkey and Russia, who back the respective rival governments in Libya's complicated 9-month-old war. Al Jazeera's Step VAESSEN reports.
The aim of Monday's meeting in Moscow was to formalize the ceasefire that started in Libya on Sunday, 24 hours earlier. Russia and Turkey invited Fayez al-Sarraj, Prime Minister of the UN-backed government, and warlord Khalifa Haftar to sign a more permanent truce that's aimed at paving the way towards formal negotiations to end Libya's 9-year-long civil war. But after 7 hours of talks, one signature remains missing.
Today we can report that a certain progress has been achieved, and the chairman of the Government of National Accord of Libya, Mr. Sarraj, and the chairman of High Council of State, Mr. Mehri, has just signed it. Marshal Haftar, the commander of Libyan National Army, and the president of Libyan House of Representatives in Tobruk, Mr. Aguila Saleh, see this document positively and have asked for some extra time till tomorrow morning to decide on whether to sign it. I hope their decision will be positive.
The ceasefire was brokered by the presidents of Turkey and Russia in Istanbul last week. Following a meeting with Italy's Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte, Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced he will be in Berlin on January the 19th for an international conference aimed at ending the Libyan conflict.
Even if it is only in one day. I believe a strong result will emerge from these talks. The talks which take place in Moscow today lay the foundation for the Berlin process.
Turkish troops were recently sent to Libya to help slow Haftar's 9-month advance on the capital, Tripoli. In the complicated proxy war, Russian mercenaries, together with the United Arab Emirates and Egypt, are aiding Haftar. Both Russia and Turkey say they are hopeful that Haftar will sign the truce agreement on Tuesday morning. The long and complicated negotiations here in Moscow show how complicated the conflict in Libya is. With the international conference due in Berlin, it's crucial that the truce agreement will be signed and sealed here in Moscow first. Step VAESSEN, Al Jazeera, Moscow.
The Trump administration has announced that 21 Saudi military trainees in the U.S. will be sent back to the kingdom. It follows an investigation by the U.S. Attorney General and FBI into December's shooting by a Saudi cadet at a naval base in Pensacola, Florida. At a naval base in Pensacola, Florida, 3 U.S. sailors were killed in the attack that Washington is calling an act of terrorism. Al Jazeera's Mike Hanna reports.
The shooting shocked the tightly knit community at Pensacola and raised questions about the training programs that allowed hundreds of international cadets to attend courses at U.S. bases. The FBI interviewed some 500 people in its investigation, in which it found that the shooter, Mohammed al-Shamrani, acted alone and that none of his fellow Saudi officers had any foreknowledge of the attack. But the social media accounts of 21 of the cadets contained what the U.S. Attorney General called derogatory material, ranging from what is described as terrorist-related content to child pornography.
The relevant U.S. Attorney's offices independently reviewed each of the 21 cases involving derogatory information and determined that none of them would, in the normal course, result in federal prosecution. However, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia determined that this material demonstrated conduct unbecoming an officer in the Royal Saudi Air Force and in the Royal Navy, and the 21 cadets have been disenrolled from their training curriculum in the U.S. military and will be returning to Saudi Arabia.
The FBI also released details about the shooter's activities in the days leading to the attack, which included a visit to the 9/11 memorial in New York City, as well as posting a number of anti-U.S. and anti-Israeli comments on his social media feeds. The conclusion that the killings were an act of terrorism motivated by a violent ideology. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Niger's president has replaced his army chief after rebel fighters killed 89 soldiers in the western town of Chinagodra last Thursday. At a meeting in a southwestern French city, France and 5 West African states agreed to combine their security forces to stabilize Africa's Sahel region, which is under increasing attack from armed groups. Al Jazeera's Ahmed Idris reports from Niamey.
The mood across Niger is somber as the country mourns. The string of losses recently suffered by the army has shaken many here and raised concerns about the future.
The attackers are trying to conquer territory. I think once they are done with this country, they will move on to another. They have a global agenda.
After the devastating loss at Chinagodar, the government of Niger is struggling to deal with the fallout from the attack.
What you need to know is the whole of the Sahel is unstable. Leaders in the region are collaborating. Our soldiers are doing their best and need the support of everyone. It's not easy, but we hope things will improve. We hope the hardship we're going through will pass soon.
President YOUSSOUFOU joined leaders of Mauritania, Mali, Chad and Burkina Faso for a summit with French President Emmanuel Macron in Pau, France, but not before making changes in Niger's military leadership. A move described as too little too late for victims of these attacks.
Niger unfortunately bears the brunt of the attacks. The new appointments are coming after much damage is done. The problem is structural. Families who lost members are mourning and will continue to do so. What government needs to do is to take measures to prevent this from happening.
Niger, like most countries of the Sahel, is facing an uncertain future. In less than 2 months, 160 of its soldiers have been killed by armed groups.
This monument was built in the center of the city in honor of the 71 soldiers killed in Anates last month. Another 89 soldiers were killed in another attack last week. The threat from armed groups is a major concern for people, especially those living in areas close to the border with Mali and Nigeria.
3 days of national mourning is underway. People in the Sahel countries who are now becoming more accustomed to these attacks wonder why the armed groups will strike next. Ahmed Idris, Al Jazeera, Niamey, Niger.
Before we end the news, a recap of our main headlines. Police denies Operation 3 years journal permit. Doduja claims government is afraid of Jammeh. Government to show zero tolerance to human rights violations and trafficking, says Vice President Dr. Aissatou Touré. Senegalese at Karang restricts Gambia buses from transporting their customers to Dakar. That's all for this edition of the news. Please enjoy the rest of our programs and join us tomorrow for more news. Thank you.